Fund. I was just told that Councilmember Sales, who's the fourth member of this committee, is going to be joining us via Zoom. I would like to double check with the clerk to see if she's on. I don't see her. Let me see. I'm turning on the AV here. Oh, there she is. Good to know you're here. I had no idea that we were not coming in person, but hey, there you are. So let's start. So I just want to, it's going to be a general discussion, but also I want committee members to know that the follow-up on this conversation is going to be on the July 10th session, where we're going to be talking about small businesses and especially grantees receiving funds to actually help us with job growth in Montgomery County. And there's also going to be another item on the Purple Line grants. So those are the two items for July 10th. With that, I'm going to pass it to Ms. Marlene Michelson so she can start this session and then introduce the county executives team and the Economic Development Corporation, and I see Bill in the back. So,
great. Good morning. So the committee requested a follow-up during budget, and as you know, during budget, it's a very condensed look at the funding, and there were a lot of questions that came up, and you wanted an opportunity to return and go back and look at these funds in greater depth. And the overall question I would ask, and I think the committee will be interested in, is do we know that the dollars that we're investing through these programs are working? And if not, are there better ways to use these dollars? I don't believe that we should be decreasing the total amount we're investing in economic development, but it is possible that there are unmet needs that might yield a greater result. So this is the first step in understanding whether the investments the county is making through these programs are really producing the intended results, and if not, to be able to explore alternatives in the future. And you know, we will continue to work with our partners in county government and MCEDC to understand the needs of businesses, because they're the ones on the front line hearing what those requests are, and we want to make sure that we are meeting those requests. So with that, the committee chair sent out a number of questions to help steer this conversation, and we'll see if my colleagues here have any opening comments, and if not, I think we can just start going through the questions, and of course if committee members have any opening comments they want to make as well. So Jake, why don't I start with you and county government, and if you can make introductions and see whether there are any opening comments, and then just turn it over to your colleagues.
Appreciate that, Ms. Michelson, and thank you to the committee for excuse me, the continued partnership on this issue. We're excited to be here today to talk about the Economic Development Fund. Ms. Michelson and I were talking Friday afternoon and remarking how the Economic Development Fund isn't just an opportunity to help businesses grow. It is also a marketing tool for the county. It is another way for the county to say, we are excited to bring businesses to the county, and we're going to do everything we can to keep and retain businesses here. Excited to be joined by our partners in this. I'll just go down to my right, Darissa Michaela from the Business Center team, Dennis Hetman from the Department of Finance, Brad Stewart from Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation, and Lori Boyer-Babb from the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. Brad, do you have anything you want to say? Yeah, with that, I think we're just here to answer questions and to continue this conversation. Thank you for the opportunity.
If we can then start jumping, I send you a list of questions. If you can please go through them, and I'm going to ask committee members to please, if you have a question, please free to let me know so we can jump right in. And also a reminder that we do have a joint session with the Public Safety Committee later on. We should be done here by 11 at the latest, so we can have the other committee coming in. I'm going to keep track of time, but I just want everybody to know that. So the first question that I sent over, so if we can start with this one. First question, how is the Economic Development Fund used by the county executive and MCEDC to actively achieve the goals of the comprehensive economic development strategy?
Absolutely, and let me start with this, and then I'll defer to my colleagues from MCEDC if they have more to add. And we provide provided the committee a bit of a written response to this one, but the purpose of the Economic Development Fund is to give opportunities in a variety of ways to attract, retain businesses through the county, right? And there are a variety of funds, as you know, from the budget conversations that help us do that. This year, the council approved $750,000 for the MOVE program, which helps us get smaller businesses to relocate to the county. $200,000 for the biotech investor incentive program, which allows us to specifically focus on this key industry in the county. $425,000 for the newly revamped SBIR program, and thank you to the council for speedily moving that along. But this will allow us to continue to get nationwide recognition as the only county that has a SBIR program. And with the new tooling of the SBIR program, we are able to fund these startup level operations that are just getting started and need help to apply for these larger federal SBIR grants, as well as $150,000 for micro lending. And I know we're going to discuss more about micro lending later, and we have a representative from LEDC to help with that discussion. But these funds, together with the other funds in the program, help us hone in on these businesses and help the county. It's another tool in the toolbox. Every state and locality has these different funds, and being able to compete with them and being able to showcase that Montgomery County came to play is important. And
Jake, if I can interrupt you really quickly, let's make the assumption that somebody who's about to start a new business is listening to this discussion right now.
Awesome.
And he's hearing, or she's hearing, oh, we have, Montgomery County has grants available for me to start up. How they apply, how they get more information, how, that's always a key question. There's a lot going on here. It's just breaking it down for people to understand that the help is getting, and also how you're tracking, who's being successful, how are you really helping them to move to the next step.
So let me answer the first part of that question, then defer to Mr. Stewart and Mr. Bakila, but would urge the millions of people listening at home to please go to montgomerycountymd.gov/business. You will find the revamped Business Center website that has all the information on the variety of grants that are available through the county, how to apply for them, and you can reach out to the Business Center where we have people ready to help you with anything that you need. With that, let me turn it over to Mr. Stewart or Ms. Boyer.
Thanks, Jake. Laurie Babb with MCEDC. So I will also add, as Mr. Weissman indicated, all of these programs are marketing tools for us. So thinkmoco.com is another great resource where we list all of the incentives that are available, and that includes grants, loans, business counseling assistance. So it's not necessarily just about the EDF fund itself. It's about the comprehensive strategy that we have for providing support and assistance to these businesses as they're looking to start. And there are programs other than Montgomery County. Many of our programs, some of our discretionary programs are actually needed as a match to a state of Maryland program. So the state does have some requirements for some of their programs. So if the state is also interested in investing in a new company or a company that's moving here and growing here, the county is required by state law to provide at least a 10% match to those grants. So this EDF fund also serves that purpose, where we're required to meet some of those matching requirements from the state.
So Brad Stewart with MCDC, I'll add to that. So for new businesses, we work very closely with not only the Montgomery County Business Center run by Mr. Smith, but we have a large collection of partners that we work closely with. So part of our role is helping to connect them to the right people, people like the LEDC, the Latino Economic Development Corporation. Ms. Babb runs a loan program, that the ACE loan fund that we run through money from the state. We work in partnership with LEDC. People like the Maryland Women's Business Center, the SBA. So for us, it's not only the resources the county provides through the Business Center, but what are other partners we support and work with who have that very particular expertise that may be specific to a business's needs.
Thank you for that. If not, we can move on to the second question, which you have in front of you. Do you have? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everybody. Ms. Babb, I appreciate the explanation regarding the different funds and state versus county. And you noted that it's state law that any state award that is given or incentive, the county has to match that 10%. Is that what you said?
Not any. There are some specific programs that have those requirements. The state has some of their own incentives that do not require local matches, but their large discretionary fund, which our EDF grant and loan program is our local discretionary fund. So the state has Advanced Maryland, or MEDAF, what was traditionally called MEDAF. That discretionary fund, which is based solely on capital investment and job creation, does have a 10% required local match.
Perfect, thank you. So, I mean, the reason that we're having this conversation is to dive deeper into the money. And with regard to the relationship between the state and the county, I'm curious if it's quantifiable, and I hope it is. How much, given this 10% requirement, how often is it that a business will come to us and that we will say, this is a great opportunity for the state, and so the state will kick in, whereby the 10%, maybe in this instance, we were already going to be committed, versus how often does some business go to the state and say, hey, Montgomery County, you are now required to do this because we want this?
Well, that's a great question. I would say we work very closely with our partners at the Maryland Department of Commerce. We do get a number of leads from them. The state is often contacted for some of those larger projects where a site selector might be running the process, and they're like, you know, we need 200,000 square feet. This is going to bring 200 jobs. They're looking to invest $100 million in capital, and they'll put out an RFI. And so the state will contact us and say, give us your best sites for this. What can you do to support that kind of thing? So we often get leads from the state like that. However, for some of our small and mid-sized companies, often those businesses don't have a big enough ROI for the state that the state would get involved in some of those projects. So that's why some of our programs here at the local level, like the SBIR matching grant program, the MOVE grant program, some of those programs are that's just us on our own. But the state then also has some other programs that we don't have, and the state, even through the Department of Housing and Community Development, has Neighborhood Business Works programs, which targets retail sections, downtown areas that need to do facade improvements and things like that, which is something that we do have some of those grant programs that we in economic development aren't really involved in. That's the housing and HHS folks who run a facade improvement program. So there are so many programs that are out there, and most of them are made to be targeted to either specific industry type or size of business. So there are different incentives for small to mid-sized businesses, different incentives for those large businesses that are going to be making a huge difference, you know, on the return on investment to the county and to the state if they choose to locate here. So it's an interesting combination, but we work together with folks from many different agencies, as Brad had mentioned, you know, and different departments, to make sure that we're providing the right support at the right time to the business based on who they are and what they need.
And I don't want to get ahead of the conversation, but is it possibly too complicated to navigate for businesses, or are the level and the variety of programs tailor-made as businesses emerge, as the landscape changes, tailoring the types of incentives to the new environment that's out there?
Yeah, my instinct is that it's probably confusing for businesses who are looking at it on their own, but when they reach out to us or to the Montgomery County Business Center team, or someone, you know, someone who knows how to guide the business, that's where the human touch comes in, and we're the ones who can help guide them to the right resources at the right time, connect them with the right folks, and make that path much easier for them to go down. So that's why we're always encouraging businesses to reach out to any of us if they ever find themselves in a situation where they're like, you know, is there something that can help me? I'm not sure where to go. this is who you come to.
Yeah, I appreciate that sentiment. And again, the whole purpose of this conversation is to make sure that the resources are being applied as efficiently as possible with the best return of investment, and then also that they're accessible. And quite frankly, that my hope is that businesses and entrepreneurs don't have to hire a lobbyist or hire a Sherpa to walk them through these processes. And so that's why I asked about the variety, but I appreciate your response.
And I know that everything interweaves with everything else. But 2 points. One point and a question. I think that the issue of complication, yes, it's complicated and very complex, and it makes a lot more sense if they do have a Sherpa to guide them, right? The issue is that I think that there are a lot of businesses out there who don't even know who to call. They don't even know that it's possible to call. So this is a situation that we've talked about for many, many years of how do we reach out to all businesses. So I think that continues to be an issue, and particularly when money is available and support's available. So I think that that's something that I would like to continue to follow up on, is outreach to all businesses in the county. But I do have a question about the interaction with the state. Are there ever situations where the company comes to Montgomery County first, and you think that this would be a great partnership for the state to pitch in, but the state doesn't pitch in funds? Is there ever a time when they disagree that it's worth their investment?
Thank you, Councilmember Balcom. I'll take a shot at that. So, yes. And I think to President Glass's point, it is a very complicated system. It's complicated in part because there's so many different opportunities for people to take advantage of. The challenge is with the rules and how they were designed for certain things. It's how to, out of that myriad of different programs, to figure out which ones are really applicable to you. I have to really commend Mr. Weissman's team and the Montgomery County Business Center, their efforts to streamline the webpage that provides people sort of a starting point. And to be fair, that's what it is, because you have to start somewhere, and that really is the best place to start. And then whether it's us as humans, I hope, that can help break those things down, or even our partners at LEDC or the Maryland Women's Business Center, I hope we all work very well together collectively to try and do that. So to answer your question specifically, that happens. I try to explain to everyone who we talk to that economic development is really a 3-layer strategy. The county's sort of in the middle of that. The state of Maryland has a large number of incentives that are available to businesses. The county does also. And then we work closely with the local jurisdictions. Both the city of Rockville and the city of Gaithersburg have economic development groups we work closely with for businesses in those jurisdictions. We have businesses that the state really wants and pushes us to work with, and vice versa. We have businesses we really want to work with that the state may have a different level of interest in. In general, in economic development, there's 2 types of incentives. There are statutory incentives, or by right. So the MOVE program is a good example of that. The program has regulations, and if you meet those requirements, then you're eligible just because you meet those regulations. The state has many of those. So it's not entirely uncommon that we'll run into cases where almost all of the incentives we can offer to a business are statutory ones. There also are discretionary incentives. That's what Mrs. Babb was referring to, and those are ones which are based on what the potential economic return is from those businesses moving to the jurisdiction. The state and county, we work very closely together on those, but sometimes we have different interests. As she said, the requirement is that whatever the state provides, the county has to provide at least a 10% match to enable that. In answer to President Glass's question, on page 13 or 14 of your handout, there's actually a table that lists the leverage of how much. So over the course of this program in the last 6 years, there's been almost $4 of state money invested for every dollar of county money in discretionary programs. That's not at all unusual. It's slightly more unusual that we have programs where the county is disproportionately the person who funds those discretionary programs, but it is not at all, it does happen. So I think that's where the county then makes its own strategic decisions about how best to support those businesses. The state's a great partner of ours, though. They're almost always willing to participate in some form.
I'll just jump in and add one thing, Councilmember Balcom, to your specific question. Often the state says to us, we will take the local jurisdiction's lead on this project. So if it's something we really want, if it's a business that really makes sense for Montgomery County and the state is interested, they'll gauge how much of a financial incentive are we providing, and then they will provide the proportionate share at the state level. But they are very supportive of what the local jurisdictions target industries are and what we're looking to bring here, and they will often say we're going to take the locals lead on this one. So they are great partners with that.
Can we talk briefly about, we're talking about businesses in general, but also we sometimes forget that it's, at the end of the day, it's about quality of life, right? You want more jobs coming to Montgomery County, but you want your employees to have quality of life and enjoying, the different amenities that we have. And among those amenities are great restaurants. So I know the restaurant business is a different animal. And I've been doing this tour with DPS, going to places that have challenges with DPS and also HHS. And it has been heartbreaking to hear from local restaurants that they receive zero help with the county in terms of grants, especially during the pandemic. So I know we're gonna have to talk about micro lending at some point, but where would that conversation be in terms of focusing on ensuring that we're providing help to the restaurant industry in Montgomery County? And we have great places here, anywhere in the county, in the Ag Reserve, downtown Silver Spring, Wheaton, Bethesda, Poolsville. Man, that place, locals, is amazing. And then, I can go on, but the stories are heartbreaking because if we just focus on getting jobs here, which is great, but we don't focus on ensuring that the local restaurant industry is vibrant, then we're failing. So any insight that you can please provide on that industry, that will be great, and we can follow up in the next session. But in general, we'll be especially highlighting any grants that we have, and if we don't have any, then we're gonna have to start talking about them. I see Mr. Smith.
Hey, good morning, council members. Gene Smith, Business Center Manager. Yes, so I will be honest, we've been working together as a team to figure out, because the primary use of the Economic Development Fund over the last 20, 30 years has been for larger attraction retention projects. There have been some smaller, or projects, I shouldn't say smaller, there have been projects that have focused on our smaller businesses, such as a small business assistance program that ran in Wheaton during the county's construction project that aimed to help businesses, all small businesses there that were restaurants, retail, et cetera. The EDF has not traditionally been used to help retail or restaurant businesses given the strategic nature of the EDF. However, as I've come into the Business Center, I'd like our team to be looking into that. Previously, there was a small business revolving loan program the county ran. Unfortunately, it was, I would say, highly unsuccessful. Most of the businesses did not succeed enough to pay back the loans, and the county has discontinued that. So that's why we shifted to the micro-lending program to let our partners who are better suited to do the underwriting to determine which businesses are able to pay back loans and not. That's why those partners are doing that. Certainly we can think about how do we target grants to restaurants especially, but I think that takes a lot of time to figure out the best way to do it so that when we're targeting the money and the funding, it's equitable for all businesses and restaurants in the county and how we're doing that, but also a good return for the county, not necessarily in terms of financial investment return as far as income taxes or property taxes, but a good return in terms of what you're talking about, good placemaking, good growth, and good amenities. But excited to have that conversation because it's one that I want to have.
Love it. Look forward to having that conversation in much more detail. So let's keep moving. Question, yes, who wants to?
So I wanted to add one thing. So, Mr. Chairman, there was, during the pandemic, there actually was a restaurant relief grant program. So MCDC actually ran a program with 3 rounds of restaurant relief grants that we administered and provided a substantial amount of funding to support those restaurants.
Can you get back to us with a report on the outcomes from that? How many restaurants actually got the grant? How
Sure.
many did not qualify, and why? Because what I'm hearing is the opposite. So if we can have that conversation once we have the detailed conversation about the restaurant industry,
so
that'll be great.
I'm pretty sure we provided a report previously to the Fed committee when we were doing that, and happy to provide
that was before
a copy
this
of it.
council.
Provide a copy of it to this
Yeah,
committee.
I'll just add for the public conversation that there were ongoing, over the last number of years, there have been ongoing updates as we have decided how to use ARPA funds, all the COVID funds, and direct them. And so I know that I agree that that information is out there, but it's worth continued conversation.
Excellent. So we're going to move on to question number 2, and after that, I'm going to let Councilmember Sales to ask her question. But question number 2 on the package, whether or not an incentive is awarded, what are the most common funding requests from brokers and companies? For example, offsetting construction costs, providing custom infrastructure, rental assistance, providing tax fee relief, offsetting competitive salaries, startup capital, etc. And how do these requests differ by company size, type, and location? Thank you.
So I'll start, but I think all of us will probably have a lot to add about that. With MCDC, our general customer or person we're working with are companies. So it's very unusual that we would deal with a developer or a landlord or real estate person. That's just not how our incentive programs are designed. They're designed for the companies that are coming into Montgomery County and employing people here. How they spend that money is a different story. For us, it's usually a complex number of things that companies are looking at to either stay here or to come to Montgomery County. And it's not just financial incentives. You mentioned an important one, quality of life. They clearly want to be where their employees want to live or able to live, can afford to live. Certainly access to talent is a critical one. That's one we face constantly. I've mentioned this for years now. For life sciences, there's really only 2 questions we get, and that is 1, can you physically accommodate us? Will we have a space that will suit their needs? And 2, where's my talent going to come from? We've made great progress on the first, which is primarily done by the private market. We've made not enough progress on the second. We still have a chronic talent shortage. In addition to that, whether it's a developer or a company, the one thing that they always want to know is, when will I occupy the place that I'm going to be in? That's just a requirement for them to run business, and that is sometimes quite challenging here in the county, whether it's from planning or permitting, giving them a date certain when they'll occupy the property. So, Lori?
Thanks, Brad. So I'll also add that you asked, by company size. I will say upfront financial incentives are more important to small to mid-sized companies because they're new. They're startups, they're new to market, they don't have a lot of cash. So that's why the MOVE grant, I think, is so successful, because generally those companies are either they're new to Montgomery County. Many of them were home-based businesses here in Montgomery County, and they've gotten to a point where they can sign a lease now. So some of that upfront cash, helps them with their fit-out costs when they're actually moving into a commercial space for the first time. For larger companies, oftentimes it's the statutory tax credit programs where they're going to get a tax credit from the county and the state because they've created at least 25 or 60 new jobs in the jurisdiction. So in a year, when they submit their employment reports, they'll get a credit on the income tax that they've paid. So again, depending on the size of the business, some of these incentives work differently and are more important. But I will add that, the developers often tell us, we don't care what well, they do care what the timeline is, but tell us what the timeline is and then don't change it halfway through our project. Because for any business, time is money. So if you tell me I'm going to have all of the approvals and permits that I need and I can move in 12 months, then we're planning for 12 months to be up and operational in that space. When that 12 months turns into 18 or 24 months, that costs that business a lot of money. So it's the certainty of knowing that. I will say one of the recent zoning text amendments that was passed specifically for lab development in the county that includes a waiver of the transportation impact fee. We have heard from developers that that has made a big difference to them, that is one way that's going to encourage, and we've got 2 million square feet of lab space under development now in the county, partially as a result of things like that zoning text amendment that are going to make it easier for them to move forward.
Great, thank you for that. And not just the zoning, I just, again, going back to the experience that I've been having with DPS, where businesses are telling me, restaurants are telling me that they were not able to open. They had to wait 3, 5, 6 months because they were waiting for a permit from DPS or HHS. Meanwhile, they had to be paying rent. So, so we're gonna look into those issues as we move forward. I just heard from Councilmember Sales that she's gonna ask her questions after we're done with this ones. So we're gonna keep on moving. Do you have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on something that Mr. Stewart mentioned, is the talent shortage. So we know that there's a talent shortage nationwide. How do we compare to local jurisdictions and our competitors? I would think that we're in the same boat as others and might be better than others. What is your experience with that?
Well, it certainly depends on the field that you're talking about. There's big differences across that. As you know, my background's in life sciences, and life sciences, we're losing ground rapidly to many other states. If you look at states like, ironically, I was just speaking on a panel about this last Thursday, I think. So, state of Massachusetts decided 15 years ago that life sciences was strategically important to them and invested in not only economic incentives like we're talking about, but education, training to build a talented workforce to attract companies there. It's had a staggering positive impact on their state. You see the same things in the state of North Carolina, now Texas, California, Georgia even, which is not a place people typically think of for life sciences. So we have some challenges there. We're losing ground to those. And if you look at about 2 years ago, the Maryland Tech Council did a study looking at how life sciences is doing in the state of Maryland. Even though we're growing significantly here, we're losing ground much more rapidly to other people. And so that's both a challenge and an opportunity.
Is it a matter of our four-year institution? Is it?
I think it's more than that. We've overcome some of the hurdles that I think were here when I first came to Montgomery County 27 years ago in life sciences, and that is just a very small pool of companies, and my background's on the commercial side of life sciences. There weren't many companies in that space. Now we have a much larger variety of companies, a lot of biomanufacturing, so we have a talent shortage in people who have skills that are high school or associate's degree based that are working in biomanufacturing. That's a program that the Maryland Tech Council's BioHub Maryland program is focused on trying to solve. It also comes from the 2- and 4-year master's degree and PhD level ones. Part of it is a challenge of once people are located in another jurisdiction and they don't necessarily want to move and relocate for a new job. Other parts of it is we just don't have a huge educational infrastructure providing those degrees in this area.
Thank you.
Can I just add that the very first session that this committee had, very first one, was just on that topic. I brought up the data for third graders in MCPS, the math and literacy data, how far behind us we are right now. And the big push that we did as a council on this budget, very controversial budget, that we passed, was to ensure that NCPS not only will pay, the teachers a living wage salary, but they will also provide more assistance for kids in elementary school to be on the standards for math and literacy on third grade. So by the time they go to middle school and high school, they have a strong foundation. And that links, even though you may think, well, that's long term, Natalie. Well, we gotta think long term to make sure that we're preparing the next generation. In my view. So working closely with MCPS is key on this whole area. And any ideas, suggestions that you have to keep working closely with Montgomery College, the University of Maryland, College Parking. We're doing great things in life sciences in North Bethesda. We can always do more to ensure that Montgomery County is #1 on this area. Well, thank you for that input. We're going to continue with the questions because we have quite a few, and we got to leave in an hour. The third one, in the past, we have heard from businesses that the county doesn't provide large enough incentives to be a real attraction tool. In a stakeholder meeting, several companies have received grants, expressed that they are not going to say no to money, but the county fundings didn't significantly impact their company or their decision to move into the county. Are there any documented situations in which an incentive was the determining factor of a successful retention, expansion, or attraction project? How do you determine whether the incentive truly made a difference? Do you know why? And we just put a couple businesses that we know. One of them left to Virginia, the other one left to Frederick. So getting more in depth into the incentive packages and how effective they are.
So that question is actually full of a lot of different pieces. And as someone who has been in the economic development world for over 22 years now, this is something we could spend years looking at and studying and writing dozens of white papers on all the different components that go on into answering that. But as Mr. Stewart had mentioned previously, oftentimes the decision for the company is not about the financial incentive they receive. It's about does this jurisdiction have a building that's going to suit my needs, or a piece of land where I can build the building that I need, that has the correct zoning, that has the correct highway access? Am I close to my supply chain providers? Do my employees work here, around here, or can they afford to live here and get to work
Let me interrupt, because that's a very general answer,
Yep.
very, common sense answer. Can you be more specific? Like when a company exits, leaves Montgomery County, do you ask them, why do you leave? Is there a follow-up interview process of what is it that we're not doing that we should be doing better?
So there are a few companies, the two that you mentioned, the one company that moved to Frederick, a majority of the workforce resided in Frederick or further out than Frederick. So it made sense for them to cut down on commute times for their employee base and to move there. The company that moved to Virginia, they were actually had acquired another company, and there was a larger workforce already in that Northern Virginia location. So a business decision, they consolidated their locations after the acquisition so that they were all in one location instead of operating out of two different locations. We have also had companies leave Montgomery County because they needed industrial zoned space. We have very limited industrial zoned, light industrial, almost no heavy industrial zoned land here, which was done very purposefully. But we have lost some folks who do kind of some light manufacturing production who needed a larger light industrial building or space that was not available to them. So they moved to Frederick, where they have more of that type of space available. So it's generally very specific to the company itself. It's not anything in general what Montgomery County doesn't have or didn't do. It's my workforce is in this other jurisdiction. We just bought this company. They had more employees than we do, so we're going to consolidate into one location. Those are the reasons why folks leave. We know those reasons. There's not a lot you can do about those types of decisions.
I still think that in Montgomery County, this urgency of making sure that we're attracting businesses and growing the business that we're here is not there. So
I think it's important to have a discussion about retention efforts. And so can we just, Mr. Stewart, I guess, and Mr. Weissman, just talk about the care and feeding of businesses and how you reach out and make sure that you know if someone's planning on moving and how that process works.
Thank you, Councilmember Malcolm. So we work closely with the Montgomery County Business Center. So part of that is awareness, as was mentioned earlier. Last year, I think it was a year ago, we actually sent out, at the request of the then Fed Committee, postcards to every business we could locate in Montgomery County. There were 31,000, maybe a little bit more than that. Part of the challenge, obviously, is I think most of you know there is no centralized magical database of businesses in this state or county. And so just pulling those things together is sometimes a challenge. So part of it is just simply letting people know who we are, what we do, what MCBC does, and how to get them. After I'm done, I know Mr. Weissman will want to talk about the team, or actually, is Gene still up here? Gene's team that works out in the community with businesses. For us, our team is focused on the strategic industries that Montgomery County has. So things like the hospitality industry, life sciences, technology, corporate headquarters. Those businesses tend to be larger employers with much longer term leases. So we probably have pretty deep connections with them. Sometimes they're 10, 15, 20-year leases. Companies like Marriott, who will be here, we hope, again for a very long time. So we keep in close personal contact with them. We're always out at networking events, talking to people, trying to attract them here and keep them here. Additionally, we use other tools that are available. CoStar, some of you may be familiar with, is a real estate database. Unfortunately, it only lists about 20% of the leases that are of when they expire. So that creates a pretty large gap for us. There are other tools that we've used over the years to try and identify, the companies sort of aggressively and prospectively before their leases come up, but it's not easy to do. But as an example, about a year ago, we actually went and looked at every business in our strategic industries that have leases expiring within 2 years in the entire DMV and created a campaign to start reaching out to all those businesses. So that's just a few of the things we do.
How did that go? How did you, you said the last 2 years you had that campaign. What was the result?
The result is you realize how much work it is. It really is a challenge. One, there is no simple, again, there's no magical database that says, hey, here's a company in Northern Virginia, their lease is going to expire, and here's the name, address, and phone number of the person who's going to make the decision on real estate. So it really is a long-term job of trying to build those contacts, understand who the people are, get in that system. Some of these decisions are ones which probably will never change. If you're an aerospace and defense company, you're probably going to be on the Dulles Toll Road or in that area, and you're not likely to move. So we've tried to focus more on those industries which are have some flexibility and are likely to move. Certainly, Ms. Babb gave a good example. When businesses get acquired to buy other businesses, they're instantly ones that we're focused on. There's a very high likelihood at that point, either in the near or distant future, that they're going to do something, whether it's to relocate where the other business is or relocate that other business to this jurisdiction. So,
all right. Thank you for that. Jake, do you have a?
Just very quickly, and Councilmember Malcolm, thank you for this question. I think Mr. Tompkins and MCEDC staff, as well as the MCEDC board members, are kind of sick and tired of hearing me say attraction, recruitment, and retention, which is the core of MCEDC's mission, especially within those strategic industries. And when it comes to the business center, what we're focused on is being responsive, engaging businesses proactively, as you know, and making the county the best place that it can be for those businesses, for those, I don't want to say non-strategic industries, but for those businesses outside of that bubble. MCEDC has been using CoStar and other tools to find as many of these businesses. I will say, as Ms. Babb said, there are businesses that decide to leave the county for no reasons to do with the county, and unfortunately that's a reality. But we need to be focused day in on day out of getting every business we can to stay here and fight every one of our competitors to lure every one of their businesses here.
That's the urgency we need to see.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to move on to question number 4. List the grants and incentive programs that we currently have and how effective they have been. Highlight the sub-funds within the annual EDF report, including a specific purpose of the fund, when it was created, expenditures by year, and how you have tracked the impact of expenditures and determined whether the program is succeeding.
Dennis Hetman, Department of Finance. So on page 3 of the annual report that we provide, this is done on a calendar year basis. This shows the proportional shares and the composition of the dollars that went out in calendar 22, and then also the cumulative assistance provided. And you'll see that the Economic Development Fund grant and loan program is easily the largest by an order of magnitude of at least
Excuse me,
two.
this is circle 3.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Trying to
My
find it.
apologies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of that, so in 22 was 1.55 million, and then the second largest is the MOVE program at just over 700,000, but total assistance 2.9 and cumulative just under 73. But that gives you an idea of the composition of them, and then it gets into more elaborate details as to the specific nuances of each within this. That is perhaps a little more than we can cover here today, but if you have any specific questions for those, by all means, we're happy to.
Maybe we can do some of them the next time we meet on July 10th, and since we're gonna have some follow-ups and LEDC might be here, right? So we can do that. We can move on, right? Do you have a question? Mike.
No, that's okay.
Okay, fine. Question 5. Please address how do we track commercialization outcomes for SBIR, STTR, matching grant awardees? Aside from our matching award, what other ecosystems elements will assist our awardees with bringing their products to market?
Yeah, so in terms of that, we actually just had a bill that was approved by council that enabled this phase 0, which is going to be hopefully quite helpful in terms of the reimbursement for technical assistance if it's expenditures related to their pursuing their first award. So we've sort of altered that and like all of these, try to design and calibrate and hone them such that in each unique instance, the business is getting out of it what they want to, and we're doing the same. So there have been alterations that have happened recently for that, but we're always open-minded to additional ones as well.
Do you have a question?
May I add to that? So, Madam Chair, one of the big reasons that we suggested changes to the council with the SBIR program was that I think one of the other things we try and do is realize how the world changes around us and how best to not only be competitive, but to leverage opportunities that exist. As I mentioned to President Glass's question about leveraging state funds in economic development, the same thing exists with SBIR funds. Since the council first passed the SBIR matching grant program and was the first county in the country to do so, it's been very helpful to keep our life sciences industry growing here, to help small businesses grow. What it didn't have at that time was two things. One, which you asked, how do we actually try and get that money focused on having an economic impact, right? Increasing jobs, increasing the likelihood those businesses will succeed. And two, how do we further leverage federal funds that are out there? The modifications that were made to this program are to do exactly that. It really was, how do we help these businesses be more likely to be financially successful as businesses? And how do we help them maximize the leverage of federal funding that's already out there? So the federal government has a program called TABA, T-A-B-A, Technical and Business Assistance, where many of the agencies which provide SBIR funding actually will provide at no cost to SBIR grantees those types of business services. They can be consulting on developing business plans, intellectual property, commercialization strategies for those businesses. And so the two major changes the council made to that program were, one, having a phase 0 grant program. So how do we get businesses in our county who haven't yet applied for SBIRs, give them some funding to be able to get a grant written and have a much higher likelihood of getting federal funding to begin with. And two, part of that program for phase 1 and phase 2 recipients actually requires them to apply for federal funding for technical and business assistance. And then the county actually designates some of those funds to help do the same things for them, not to duplicate services, but actually fund their ability to get business plans written or to do commercialization strategies, or sometimes even as much as manufacturing. So there have been, I think, quite significant, and we hope very successful changes going forward.
I do. I'm going to jump back to the prior one. I thought we'd have a bigger conversation on the outcome conversation. So when we look at page 3 and we look at the various funds, I think I'm guessing that it's much easier to look at the specific outcomes for some of the very specific grants, like the MOVE grant, the SBIR grant, the microloan. They're specific requirements and specific outcomes. So I would assume that those are easier to track. But when we look at the amount of money spent, certainly the bulk of the money that we spend is in the discretionary category, which is a lot more nebulous. So how do you track the success and the economic impact of the very large incentives?
So thank you, Councilmember Balcom. I'm sure my esteemed colleagues will add to this. I'll try and give you a comprehensive answer. If I can take one step back to make it comprehensive, with those discretionary incentives, we start, first of all, with, is this fiscally responsible for both the county and state? So we actually look at, all of the companies provide to us in their application forms the information about the number of employees they expect to hire over the course of that program. In the state's case, that's typically 10 years. In the county's case, it's typically 10 and sometimes 5 years also. We tend to work very closely together with that. Two, so we want to understand how many new jobs are either going to be created or jobs which are going to be retained. We also want to understand what sort of capital investment those companies are going to be making in the facilities they have. Sometimes those capital investments can be quite extensive, resulting in either increased property or personal property taxes. So we actually do that analysis to understand that at worst case scenario, the county is not losing money on any of those transactions. Part of the county finances department is not only to validate those calculations, but I promise you they do in incredible detail. But when you look in the packet, we talk about how those programs are administered. The state's program is administered as a 10-year conditional loan, which is forgiven over the course of 10 years as long as the business meets the milestones that are agreed to in the contract between the state and the business. In the county, there have been some changes over the years. Most of the time now, those are issued as grants, and where the conditional grants where the money isn't issued until the company hits the milestones. Even though in the past there have been clawback provisions to claw back money from people who don't perform. In the time I've been at MCDC, about 3.5 years now, those programs have all been essentially you hit the milestones and then the grants are put out then. So that's one way. We want to ensure that people are actually performing on those. I don't know if either Dennis or...
Yes, if I can add to that, and the reason I defer to Mr. Stewart to start with is all the undesignated programs start through MCEDC. They're strategic and they're focused. We get regular reports. I believe we have a 10-year reporting requirement in terms of are they hitting their job markers, and the council will see periodically different grants come before the council where job numbers are being readjusted for a variety of reasons, right? Especially during COVID and because of the teleworking situation, we had a variety of companies that have received these funds come to the executive and then the council saying, hey, we need to reduce the number of jobs and therefore the amount of funding is being reduced proportionally, things of that nature. So we actually do have, because there are markers set up at the beginning and then reporting throughout, we have a better way of knowing, frankly, these undesignated grants and funds and how they are affecting and if they're reaching their markers than many other programs that we have in the county and the state in that regard.
That was great. Thank you for sharing that. The next question will be number 6. What were the final number of state certifications for participation in the Biotechnology Investor Incentive Program for 2022? How many companies have been certified so far in 2023? How much private funding have the supplements to investors leveraged or been tied to in the past 5 years? Are these supplements still relevant in 2023? Be please as detailed as possible. You got this question in advance, so no excuse.
So this is an example of an instance where sometimes it is a supply and demand issue. There were zero and in terms of FY22, no applications for qualified biotechnology companies, and for there was one, but there was no qualified investors made investments within the required time frame. So this, in terms of the activity, has been minimal.
So what updates or what changes do we need to make?
The committee might remember this came up in conversations during the budget, and the reason we had asked to keep some money in this fund is because we still had the rest of the fiscal year, but we have been notified by the state that for the first half of the fiscal year, for the rest of this calendar year, there were no eligible companies, and it really is in part a supply and demand thing. I don't know, and I'm looking at Mr. Stewart a little bit and Ms. Babb just because they're fountains of wisdom, if there is what we can do in that regard.
I just want to clarify that program, the incentive does not go to the company. It goes to outside investors who are actually investing in the company. So it's the investors themselves, who could be anywhere in the world, who are investing in a company here in Montgomery County, who receive then a tax credit. So I just want to make sure we're clear that these are not incentives that local companies are not getting. It's investors who would invest in these local companies.
And if I can add, that's right. Part of that really is to attract investment into our local biotechnology industry. There's a little bit of the way this program runs is, the way it's designed currently is somewhat out of the county's control. So the trigger in this case is the state of Maryland has the bioinvestor tax credit. Companies apply or investors apply to that program at the state level. It's a very competitive process. There's a limited number of those that get approved every year based on the budget that the state has available. For them to get access to those funds in the county, they have to have gotten access to those funds from the state first. So as Mr. Hetman was saying, that's how we know that there won't be any this year. There weren't any counties or there weren't any companies from Montgomery County who were made it into the program at the state level. So hence there's no flow through back to the county to fund that portion of the program.
And you will recall that the committee reduced the funding for this program for the very reason that there had not been any applicants, and it really does raise the question whether the existence of this program, which is really a state program and we provide some funding as well, whether it's successful in attracting outside investors. So I think it raises the question of, is that an important goal? If it is, then we need to figure out another strategy, or maybe there's a different path rather than trying to use dollars to attract investors who are probably using a set of criteria that are not really impacted by the availability of these dollars. So,
is the county match or county grant mandatory, or is that something that we've chosen to participate in?
It's not mandatory. That's a program that Montgomery County set up separately.
Okay.
And just to add a little bit on, the program is very helpful. I think the real challenge is at the state level, and this has been an issue basically since the inception of the bioinvestor tax credit, and that is it's a very limited pool of money, and it's first come, first serve. So it is really outside of our control about for which companies get access to that funding. But for those companies who do rely upon that program, both the state and the county level, it's a substantial advantage to them to get the funding that goes back to their investors to encourage them to invest here. You'll find frequently that these are on multi-year cycles. As you know, most biotechnology companies are raising money constantly, and when they happen to get it in is a different issue. I think Mrs. Babb said early on, one of the things for us is just really having a portfolio of things that make Montgomery County attractive, right? It's not one program typically or one thing typically that causes someone to decide, oh, that's the one thing I need. I want to be in Montgomery County, Maryland. It really is a collection of different things. The county's done a great job of supporting our life sciences industry here, whether it's through the biotech investor tax credit, through the SBI or matching grant program, through other programs like that. So I think of it part of as a tool in the toolbox.
And just to add to that, so much like the SBIR matching grant program, we are the only county in the state of Maryland that has a local match to the Biotechnology Investor Incentive Program. So again, that gives us a competitive advantage over the other jurisdictions in Maryland who are building their life sciences industry, because we are the only jurisdiction that has that local match. So it is a competitive advantage for us. And again, it's part of that toolbox specific to the life sciences company.
Thank you. Council President Glass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a good discussion. And again, it is, I think, illuminative of the different types of programs that exist and helping navigate them. And so I just went online to look at the Biotech Investor Incentive Program and see that it was actually introduced back in 2010 by Councilmember Balcom's predecessor, our friend Councilmember Knapp. Yeah, predecessor's predecessor. I did say 2010. But it speaks to how a program was created at a point in time and how we have the responsibility to update and modernize and bring it into the year 2023 and beyond. And so an extremely important program that clearly has not been utilized in the last fiscal year. And it's just a statement of fact. And so what can we do? How can we consolidate? How can we update this? How can we incorporate this into other programs so that it is useful and so that we do not have pools, pockets of money that could be used for many other important purposes? That's why we're having this conversation. And so I look forward to future conversations. I look forward to ideas as to how we can do that, because no one will deny the importance and the utility of this goal. It's just how do we bring it into this decade, or maybe 2 decades since it was introduced. So.
Go ahead.
Before, I don't know if that was a rhetorical or if there's going to be answer, but I want to add on to that. I understand the goal, but why wouldn't it just be more efficient to just give the money directly to the company? I know that I would assume that the concept is to leverage additional investment. But if a company is going to invest, if an investor is going to invest in a Montgomery County company, I don't understand the middleman, and I'm sure that's very well thought out, but could it be more effective or as effective to just give the money directly to the company?
I'll start, but I know Mr. Weissman will want to add on from his years of experience at the state level with this, but I think it's a great question. So the program was designed to accomplish a couple of different things, and I think there may be other ways to accomplish that. One, there are not a lot of investors who make investments in life sciences companies in Maryland, whether they're large venture capital firms or seed investors or angel investors. We have TEDCO that's here in the state that does things like that, but there is not a lot, and that's a big challenge for the state, and particularly at the level we're talking about here, seed stage or angel stage investors. Part of it was to it has a little bit of a domino effect. So one, it's how do we get investors who aren't making investments in Maryland now, how do we give them a reason to want to make investments? With the theory being that once they have a company that made an investment here, they start to spend time here, learn more about our ecosystem here, network with other companies here, and it gives them other opportunities. The other part of that is really the challenge in companies attracting investors is how do I get them to want to make this decision, invest in my company? So there's some economic incentive here where the investor itself gets some immediate economic benefit from making that decision. So hopefully it gives companies in Maryland preference over companies in Connecticut or California or Massachusetts or another state. And the third part is really, it's almost never that a life sciences company has simply one investor making an investment around. It's usually a syndicate of multiple investors. And there really is something that has to trigger that point where a decision's made, where someone wants to make the investment, they have an incentive to cause it to occur within a calendar year or fiscal year, and starts that domino effect of the rest of the investors making that. So the bio-investor tax credit was intended to try and do all of those. I can tell you from personal experience, it has. I can tell you it's still a challenge at the state level because it's a very limited pool of money with a first come, first served basis. So certainly one challenge is there's no certainty to an investor that they're going to receive that benefit if they make the investment. So.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I mean, Councilmember Glass's point about this being 13 years since this program was introduced here is a good one, and the state has moved forward on a variety of issues. They introduced their innovation investment tax credit last year, which is more focused on angel investors with a much larger pot of money. I think it's 33% to 50% of income that could be used against income tax, depending on the jurisdiction. But it's definitely worthwhile to look at some of the state programs and see if there are ways to better align. And I think, Councilmember Malcolm, your question is really good, and it's a question that I know I experienced a lot on the state level as these tax credits, variety of tax credits, were reviewed as to where the biggest bang for the buck is, and if giving it to the investors so they will invest in these companies is really worthwhile. Is, I think, an open question with a variety of tax credits across every jurisdiction. Right? I think it's just this open question about tax credits is as much a philosophical question as it is anything else, and one that I think is worthwhile discussion.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to jump very quickly to question number 10, just because it fits this conversation. What ways can we modernize the EDF program based on your interactions with companies and what the data says? And obviously, I'm not expecting all the answers today, but I do think it's important to understand how you're thinking on evolving all these programs based on the current economy and what we see.
So I'll just start and then turn to our partners at the EDC. Is most of these incentive programs do, affect strategic industries and run through them. But I think we need to approach all of these with an open mind. And let me give you one example. We had a company apply for a MOVE grant. I want to say it was a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. It was, I believe, when Miss Babb was still stuck with me every day. So it was a bit ago. And their square footage was just outside the MOVE recipients' parameters. A small thing, and we were able to navigate it, but it was a difference maker as to whether or not we were able to get the business here. There have been constant discussions, just to pick on the MOVE grant again, about the amount of money per square foot, and that it has not been updated in quite some time, even though costs have increased. And so that is another place to look at. And frankly, when those discussions come up, it often becomes a question of, we will be able to serve fewer businesses if we're talking about the same pot of money. We will be able to serve fewer businesses if we increase these, but provide greater assistance. And so, to be frank, I think part of that discussion also comes down to a budgeting discussion, right? And the council was under great budget pressures this year and cut about 15% of the EDF this past year. But I think moving forward, those discussions have to go hand in hand, because if it's about modernizing the programs but not providing additional funding, we will run into questions of, are we better helping companies but helping fewer companies in that regard?
We must actually have the conversation before we start talking about the budget for the next fiscal year. So maybe this fall,
absolutely,
we need to come in. This is our, at least for Councilmember Balcom and Sales and myself, it was our very first budget, and it was very challenging. So talking about these things will be extremely useful. So by the time we start talking and voting on budget items, we know the facts, we know the intentions, we know the goals. So we can just coordinate to see when we can schedule that. Okay?
I think that would be a great time to also have this discussion about restaurant grants and how we better.
I love it.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, okay, perfect. I know Councilmember Sales has a question before we touch on the other two before 11:30, 11:15, hopefully.
Do you mind if I add on before?
Okay, go
Just
ahead.
because it's about the same question,
Go ahead.
sorry. So a couple of things also to add on to Mr. Weissman's comment. One, I think all of us around the country and around the world are still trying to understand post-pandemic changes that are going to occur with economic incentives. We all struggle with what remote work means. Our traditional incentives are based on you have a human being living somewhere, paying taxes, buying a house, sending kids to school. That's not how the world is working currently. We'll see what happens 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, but that's certainly an issue that we all, again, around the world struggle with at the moment to try and understand and work together to try and have better solutions for it. If I can point out any particular challenge I think this council has an opportunity to address, I'll say our county finance department just really is understaffed and under-resourced to help with this. They're an incredible partner to us. They just don't have enough bodies to do it. And so if that ever is an opportunity to provide the support for them to do that, I can tell you that for all of us, the challenge always is how quickly we can move things along, whether it's at the state level or county level, and it's just the fact that they're under-resourced, not under-capable. And we'd appreciate that support for them.
Noted.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sales.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for putting this work session together. You know, this is the perfect opportunity post-budget to do a deep dive into the Economic Development Fund. As Council President Glass mentioned, there were quite a few questions given this being our first budget, and we had quite a few questions going through the benefits and use of these funds. I just wanted clarification. I know that these questions were sent out back in May, 10 questions, and I know we're getting close to the hour, but I'm just wondering why, you know, the packet looks much like the last packet. We received this packet on Thursday. Only 3 of the questions were responded to, and now we're spending the time going through the answers now when we should have been able to review the answers in preparation to have a more robust discussion. This committee from the start has made it clear that we take the work of economic development seriously. And I would hope that our county executive staff would work closely with us to ensure that these structural reforms are implemented to make sure that we are keeping our economy on the right track. The 10 questions that Madam Chair posed should have been responded to in detail so that this work session could have been more productive. Some of the questions that came to mind as I read the packet are still not answered. Maybe we will go into those before this session ends, but we mentioned that the NDA, could benefit from a racial equity and social justice impact analysis. Next year, will we have a racial equity and social justice analysis of each disbursement of funds from these accounts? And then of the almost 12 sub-programs listed, only 5 are active or have dollars in them. And so it would be helpful to do a more in-depth analysis, including the nature of the outreach to potential clients and those that inquire about funding to better understand, you know, how and who are receiving these funds. Should we get the Office of Legislative Oversight and maybe an external auditing firm to review the programs and offer substantive recommendations for restructuring and improving? And then finally, one of the responses mentions neighboring states like Virginia, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia with attractive incentive plans that compete directly with our plans. I would love to hear more details about the nature of those plans and how we can be even more competitive. Now that we know their playbook, what are we doing to modernize some of these EDF funds? Thank you.
I will just say very quickly the questions that were sent to the participants here, I sent to them so we can have a conversation here. At any point, any council member is allowed to bring questions and do follow-ups. And each of the questions that I posted, those are just initial questions. You are all welcome.
No, I
to-
understand you sent questions 2 months ago.
I just sent them like 2 weeks ago. Last week, actually. You guys hustled.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I don't know which questions you're referring to, but these are all new. And we're going to have another follow-up work session on July 10th as well. And do you have one specific question before we move on to the last one that you want them to answer now?
Well, yes, the last question was about the incentive packages. Since we know what's happening in Virginia, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, what are we doing here in Montgomery County to modernize our programs to make them more competitive and attractive for businesses?
I know you went over some of this already, but if you want to reiterate, please, I appreciate it.
Absolutely, and appreciate the question, Councilmember. And I want to be clear, while we don't know everything our competing jurisdictions are doing, and I don't just want to talk about regional competitors. We have competitors, in San Diego and Boston. Part of what we have been doing in partnership with MCEDC over the last year has been kind of a post-pandemic retooling, right? So you've seen news about MCEDC and the county executive going on more foreign travel or going to conferences in Boston, Washington, D.C., Prince George's Select USA conference that I know Mr. Tompkins has talked about before this committee. And it's about being proactive. It's about reaching out to them. In addition, we had a very robust conversation at the most recent MCEDC board meeting about retention and how the EDC can use a variety of tools to start retaining more companies, because part of our toolbox is making sure that the businesses here feel as good as they can at all points. And we know way ahead of time when their leases are expiring and are having conversations with them to make sure that they're not going anywhere, right? And at the same time, it is having more conversations with businesses outside of the county that are looking to move, right? It is about being aware. And so the travel that the MCEDC team has taken, and I really just kind of want to spotlight the work that they've been doing, specifically over the last couple months, in getting out there and going to conferences and having these conversations and finding these leads. We've got some great opportunities from the trip that was taken that the chair went on last year, and we've got some great leads that came out of Select USA and some real partnerships that came out of the Bio Conference. And I know ICSC, the shopping center conference, is producing some real leads, and it's investing in those opportunities. So we are not waiting for people to come to us, but we are being proactive in finding these people and getting them to understand why Montgomery County is the best place in this world for them to bring their business.
That's a great commercial right there.
And I'm glad you mentioned the trips that the EDC is taking. Will we get an opportunity to review the marketing materials that are being shared, the displays that are being shared that are promoting the Be Next campaign? It's my understanding that there weren't materials, or I'm not sure what materials were being used to promote the county's incentive programs or amenities to attract businesses. So I'm just wondering, I know we're going on these trips, but what are we leaving, and what sort of story are we painting for these businesses that we're trying to bring here?
Absolutely. Let me defer to Mr. Tompkins.
Bill Tompkins, head of MCEDC, at least for now. We have an unlimited number of marketing materials, and it's not just the Be Next campaign. That's one small piece of what we do. I will be happy. We did a 60-slide show on all of the different marketing programs we presented it to our board, to the Commerce Cabinet, which provides a summary of the types of things we do. If we can pull any of our newsletters where we actually take pictures of all the things we do, whether they be backdrops, whether they be workshop materials, brochures. We have a myriad of different types of information that we use, much of which is industry specific. We were, even on a small level, we were in Glen Echo on Saturday with the county executive. And while it was part of the African American Heritage Tour, it was part of the pitch was, you may live elsewhere in the area, but it's better here. And no matter where we are, we have an unlimited amount of material. So I'm not sure where the information came about information not being available. We've expanded our marketing budget. It's not big enough. As you know, we asked for more money, both from the county executive and from this committee and from the full council, to support even more marketing efforts, both face-to-face. But we have unlimited support in terms of a variety of print materials, social media, leave-behinds, and we would be happy to share that with you. It may be easier just to invite you over to our office and sort of do that to bring you up to speed. Same thing with the restaurant relief program. I wrote the program. I wrote the reports. We did over 1,200 restaurants, over $12 million, and I came to your neighborhood. We called on the restaurants, the senior executive team, when a restaurant would not comply to get a grant. We got them to fill out their tax reports. We made exceptions, one of which actually wasn't. The one exception we had to make was a restaurant that was barely making it in Wheaton, Maryland, because they couldn't open with permitting. We considered them to, quote, be open, and therefore they got $10,000 in grants. So I think there's a lot of information that we need to continue to provide in terms of the educational portion of what we do, and then we can go into a better debate. Is it working? Is it not working? Back to the question about what would you do with additional funds. We talked to the county executive, and I'll talk to you later when we're ready about adding $1 million for startups, which Fairfax County has. We don't. We don't have enough programs for retention purposes. It's more about attraction when it comes to the dollars. And that's where we can often be at a competitive disadvantage. We have a company sitting here right now where we can put dollars on the table to retain, but in Prince William County, they can double and triple those dollars because it becomes an attraction project for them. So that happens all the time. The question about retaining businesses, just at our board meeting, we just talked about a company where we were on, it wasn't a company, an agency here, where we could have lost 1,100 jobs. They're here, they stayed. We're talking about a company that cannot have a liquor store here, and you know who that company is, was going to move to Florida or Texas. Their headquarters is right in Bethesda, and we worked really hard to retain those 200 jobs. So I think we need to do a better job of telling the story about what is really happening behind the scenes, and I absolutely agree with you. We can do more, we want to do more, we have to do more, and we have to let you know and the public know more about what we're doing so that you're not asking the questions.
I love the fact that you were sitting in the back, just listening in, and now you walked in, you're all fired up. This is the bill I liked. So thank you for all your work. And Council President, very quickly.
Very quickly, Mr. Tompkins, thank you for your comments. If I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like you're saying that we could talk about all of these funds and all of these programs, but there are other things that might be taking place in our community, like laws, legislation, and regulation that affect a business decision.
Yes, and I will tell you, and you've heard this before, it just came up with $1 billion company that is only a mile down the road from here. The chairman of the board, Brad and I were over there. We won't name the company right now, but they do $1 billion. They want to double their business in the next 5 years. The CEO came in and says, I'm not leaving Montgomery County, but if you do not fix this permitting problem, you are the worst in the region. It comes up every single day. So when you talk about economic development, it's not always about money. It can also be about the process. And as Brad said, it is time to market. We are I'd rather talk in a more positive term, but we have a challenge when we talk about being date specific. Other jurisdictions who have horrible permitting laws, by the way, do a better job at being date specific. And that's where the time is money is a true issue. If I know that it's going to take 24 months, I'll plan for it, even though it may be longer than it takes in another jurisdiction.
And appreciate that. I thought that's what I was hearing. Just wanted to put a fine point on it. But while there are other external factors, clearly, and this conversation is not just in a vacuum regarding these funds, there are debates and discussions that will take place about all of the legislation, regulation, zoning, and other things to your point, and the point that we all know to be true. But bringing it back home, if we are putting financial investments towards some of these efforts, we want to make sure that they are working as well. So just marrying the 2 points. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Are we at final comments?
Not yet. Well, public safety is not here yet. I think we have like 5 more minutes.
Okay.
So, and I have one more question, but if you want to go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, last question, very quickly. It's question 8. I'm not gonna read the whole thing. You guys have it in front of you, but it's basically MCEDC needs to provide input on giving our current economic indicators. We had that session recently. Our goals listed in the economic development strategy and the ways that our diverse clusters of companies start, grow, and thrive. What are the top 3 ways you will invest public funding to help private sector grow more quickly? And this could be alongside the conversation we're gonna have in the future of modernizing the agency ahead of our budget discussion. So, you know, I'm just being very mindful of your time and understanding that you may not have the answer. I'm being very polite here. So, if anything that you want to share on this, any of you.
Sorry, I got to go back and reread question 8 again. But
So it's number 8, giving our current economic indicators or goals listed in the economic development strategy in the ways that our diverse clusters companies start, grow, and thrive. What are the top 3 ways you will invest public funding to help private sectors grow more quickly?
I think we can let Mr. Tompkins off the hook, and Mr. Stewart is ready to.
Okay, beautiful.
So I'll answer this and also sort of pull together all the questions that we've been asked as quickly as I can. One, we'll continue to focus on our strategic industries, and as we mentioned before, travel around the world to try and make people understand that Montgomery County, Maryland's a great place for their business to be. If there's anything that, and we have the funds that we have to do that, generally our programs are adequate. That's not always the biggest challenge we have. I think if this committee has the opportunity to help us with that, it really is the things we've talked about. It's how do we speed this process up for businesses? Time is money and money is money. So we have the money part, we need to work on the time part. So whether it's how we help to streamline the planning process, the permitting process, how we support our county finance department to have the resources internally to do the work that's needed, those are the most critical things that could be changed in the coming year.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I know Mr. Jake Weisman has one.
Appreciate
announcement.
just very quickly wanting to introduce Andrew Shaw, who's sitting in the back, is one of our RISE interns this summer and is going to be working with us on some economic development. So appreciate the opportunity there.
I see that the chair of the Public Safety Committee is here for our next part of this session, and I will just end to remind folks that our next committee session is on July 10th, and we're going to be doing follow-ups with many of the things that we discussed today and on other committee sessions. So thank you so much for your time. Do you have a last minute?
I just want to say welcome to the Summarize student. But some of the things that I want to follow up with from today, the placemaking discussion, I think is a really critical issue. It's not necessarily focused on economic development, but how does it all fit together? Because we really, I think we need to focus on that. And I'd like to have a further conversation on the talent shortage. I think that's something that we need to continue to talk about. And also communication with all businesses. I think that's something that we've kind of danced around a bit, and we need to really focus on how we do that. So thank you.
Thank you so much for coming today, and this concludes this session. We're going to take a minute break before we continue.